All right, today, guys, we're looking at a problem with the air conditioning. You know, you can see the compressor's going when it's turned on, but it's just not blowing cold. And it worked fine before we got into the winter season. I can see right from here, back on the accumulator, that cycling switch is covered with some green-colored slime-looking material, and I think that's the source of our leak. So we're going to shut this down and check it out. All right, guys, so we can see this green material all over this cycling switch that definitely wasn't there the last time this worked. And this is a combination of the dye that was put into the system to check for leaks some time ago, a few years ago, as well as the compressor oil itself is escaping through this switch. So we can be sure at least part of the problem is that we're losing coolant, or rather refrigerant, I should say, through this. So disconnect this electrical connection, and we're going to go ahead and remove this. Now you can remove this particular type of switch without evacuating the system. And the only reason there should be a problem is if maybe there's actually a problem with the Schrader valve on the accumulator here, which I doubt. But take it off nice and slow with a 16mm wrench. And if it is a problem, you'll hear some refrigerant escaping if there's a problem with the actual Schrader valve itself. But I doubt it. I think this is just the switch itself is dumping our refrigerant out and venting it. And that's what's created the leak, which it's still enough perhaps in here that yeah, there was a little bit right there that squirted out right as I got to the end. All right, so, and then you see inside here, it's just full of oil mixed with dye. So we're going to clean this up, and we're going to go ahead and remove this O-ring, and we're going to put a new O-ring and a new cycling switch on there to fix this one problem. So we'll come back when I got those parts ready. All right, guys, you know, we've got this all clean. You can see I got these green marks all over this rag. I took this switch and thoroughly cleaned it all out in here, and then I blew compressed air into the electrical connections to make sure we're all good. And then I cleaned up all around here. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this little dental pick type tool, is what I like to use for this type of job. Slip it underneath this O-ring and roll it off. And just kind of keep your finger on it so you don't lose it. Set it on the battery here, and we got a little bit more of this green debris over here that we'll clean off, and now we're going to install a new O-ring and a new part. So we're going to be replacing it with two GMC Delco parts. Got a new cycling switch on here, which is a GM52466358 and a Delco 152962. We can confirm it looks just like our old one. And then we're going to put a new O-ring seal on here, and this is a Delco 153592 and a GM 191-88-397. These usually come in a box of 10, but there's only one left in here. And so this is what you would normally put on here. And when you buy something that's R134, it's typically got a green color to it. These are sold separately. They don't include the O-ring with the cycling switch when you get it from Delco. And then I'm just going to pop this guy in my hand here. And then what I also like to do before putting it back on is put a little bit of refrigerant oil on it. So I'm just going to use some of this Delco, SAC Delco refrigerant oil. This is, if you're interested, 15, 118, 123, 56, 151. But there's nothing special about this. Put my rag down here, take my O-ring, and I'm just going to put a little bit of oil on it to lubricate it before I install it. Then I'm going to take this guy and put him right on the end there, get my fingers cleaned up, then take the same tool I used to remove the old O-ring. I'm going to slip it around the new one and use it to help install it. Just want to be careful that you don't tear it or damage it in any way. So I'm just trying to make sure I can get this guy around all these threads. Okay. And when you're sure he's on the right spot, just move that oil all around there. Make sure he's perfectly seated. Looks like he might not be exactly seated where I wanted him. So I'm just going to Kind of run this around here and make sure that he looks good. All right, that looks good. And now we'll install our switch. Same 16 millimeter wrench to install this guy as well. So this looks like the only leak that we had here. So hopefully that's all it was. Snug this guy up. And then we'll be ready to reconnect the connector. It's nice and snug. And we got the connector and it's all cleaned up. All right, so now comes the relatively hard part. So if this was empty, we could just go ahead and start evacuating the system and put new refrigerant in it. But since the compressor was still cycling, I bet it's not empty. But I'm going to see how much is left in here. So I'm going to hook up a set of gauges and see. If it's not empty, I'm going to have to run it over to a shop and have somebody evac the refrigerant for me. Because even though 134, replaced R12 and is not harming the ozone layer, it is a greenhouse gas, so you don't want to vent it into the atmosphere. So you want to have it professionally reclaimed if there's any in there. So we'll break while I get the gauge set out and we'll see what's in here. All right, guys, we've got my gauge set hooked up to this, and we're reading about 40 on the low side and about 223, maybe 224, just under 225 on the high side. When you hook up a gauge set like this, you're going to leave these valves closed because you're not actually putting anything in, and you're just going to open up these coupling valves. Now, if I take a look at the service manual, it gives me a range of pressures. And so if I take a look at my 40 and my 224-ish value, I can see I'm in the normal range here for the temperature that it is outside right now, which is in the low 70s. So if I take a look at the inside, though, if I take a look at the inside and see what the temperature is that's actually coming out, we'll see it's not as good as it used to be. So let me go show you that. All right, guys, this is a Suburban, a 99 Suburban with front and rear AC, so it normally holds about 3 pounds of R134A. We're reading just a little bit around 50 degrees inside the cabin. So, that's not too bad, but, it used to be a little better. And so I think what we've got is it's just a little bit low. If you're on a situation like this, you can either decide to take it and have them evacuate it and top you off, so to speak, or you can just live with it. I think I'm just going to live with it for a little while to make sure there's no other leaks first. But this gives you an idea about, how you could change the cycling switch and what you can check to see if it has leaked out too much. Clearly, we didn't have a bad leak. It was a small leak. So we don't really need to pursue it. I guess, you could try to put a little bit in. I prefer not to top it off like that because when it's this close, I can't tell, and you don't ever want to overcharge it. If this had been a lot hotter and the pressures had been off the normal range, I would have just taken it down, evacuated it, brought it back home, and put 3 pounds of refrigerant in it and called it a day. Anyway, so I hope this helps you out for at least the repair involving the cycling switch and the kind of things you can check to see what the condition is afterwards. If you got questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to help. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.